For years, the internet mocked Wolfgang Van Halen for his weight, but they had no idea about the brutal reality he was facing behind closed doors. You saw the headlines. You saw the cruel tweets calling him a Nepo baby or Fat Van Halen. You saw a guy who looked comfortable in the shadows of a legendary surname. But what you didn't see was the moment in September 2024, at 30,000 feet in the air, when Wolfgang Van Halen thought he was dying. He wasn't just anxious. He wasn't just stressed. He was physically shutting down in a way that would force him to make a choice: change everything, or let the darkness that had been hunting him since 2020 finally win. To understand why this transformation is so shocking, you have to understand the unique hell of being Wolfgang Van Halen. Most people think his story starts when he joined Van Halen in 2006. It doesn't. It starts with the target that was painted on his back the day he was born. When you are the son of the guitar god Eddie Van Halen and America's sweetheart Valerie Bertinelli, you aren't allowed to be average. But when he replaced Michael Anthony on bass at just 15 years old, the internet didn't just criticize him, they tried to devour him.
Imagine being 15, standing on stage next to your father, who was arguably the greatest musician of the 20th century, and checking your phone after the show to see thousands of strangers discussing your waistline. They didn't talk about his perfect harmonies. They didn't talk about the fact that he was keeping the band together during Eddie's volatile years. They talked about his size. For over a decade, Wolfgang absorbed this poison. He developed a thick skin. He learned to clap back on Twitter with witty insults. He became the cool guy who didn't care what trolls thought. But that was a lie. He cared. And while the world was busy judging his appearance, Wolfgang was secretly carrying a burden that would crush most men twice his age.
This brings us to the first brutal reality, the long goodbye. The public knows Eddie Van Halen died in October 2020. What they don't know is the 5-year war that preceded it. Wolfgang wasn't just a bandmate, he was the primary caregiver. He was the one watching his hero, his best friend, slowly deteriorate from cancer. When you are in the trenches of that kind of grief, anticipatory grief, you stop caring about yourself. You eat to survive. You eat to numb the pain. You eat because it's the one thing you can control when the rest of your world is spiraling into chaos.
So, when the trolls were making fat jokes in 2019 and 2020, Wolfgang was literally holding his father's hand through chemotherapy. He used his body as a shield, absorbing the stress so he could be the rock his family needed. And when Eddie finally passed, the bottom fell out. Wolfgang went into a deep depression. He released his debut album, Mammoth WVH, and it was a critical masterpiece, proving he played every single instrument himself. But physically, he was falling apart. He was touring, grieving, and reading comments that said he was only successful because of his last name. The stress eating compounded. The anxiety spiked. He was successful on paper, but physically, he was a ticking time bomb. Then came the second deep dive, the 2024 breaking point. It wasn't a gradual realization. It was violent. September 2024. Wolfgang is on a plane to Mexico City to open for Metallica, the biggest metal band on Earth. This should be the highlight of his career. Instead, it became a nightmare. As the plane climbed, Wolfgang's body rebelled. We're not talking about sweaty palms. We're talking about a catastrophic panic attack. His vision closed up. He started sweating profusely, yet he was freezing cold. He felt like he was going to throw up and pass out simultaneously. In his own words, he felt like everything was ending. The altitude of Mexico City, over 7,000 feet, was already a trigger, but this was psychological warfare manifested physically. He looked around the cabin and realized that despite all the money, all the fame, and all the talent, he was trapped in a body and a mind that were failing him.
That flight was the moment the knowledge gap closes for us. The internet thought he lost weight for vanity. They thought he did it to look good in music videos. No, He changed because on that plane, he stared into the void. He realized that if he didn't fix his metabolic and mental health, he wouldn't be around to honor his father's legacy. He wouldn't be around for his wife, Andrea. He realized he was becoming a tragedy waiting to happen. This leads to the third section, the transformation. And this is where we have to debunk the rumors. As soon as Wolfgang emerged in 2025 looking 80 pounds lighter, the internet screamed Ozempic. It was the lazy explanation. It fit the narrative. Rich celebrity buys a quick fix.
But the reality was far more boring and far more impressive. Wolfgang didn't take the easy way out. He went to war with his own habits. He cut out the road food, the late-night pizzas, the processed sugars that fueled his grief. He replaced them with a regimen that sounds miserable until you realize the alternative was death. Lean proteins, vegetables, and a calorie deficit that required monk-like discipline while touring the world. He started boxing. He started lifting. He didn't just want to be skinny. He wanted to be durable. He dropped his body fat to 15%. Think about the mental strength that takes. He was surrounded by the temptations of the rock star lifestyle, free alcohol, late nights, junk food, and he said no to all of it, every single day for 18 months. He did this while writing and recording his third album, The End, which deals directly with that panic and anxiety. He transmuted his trauma into muscle and music.
Let's look at the specific examples of how this played out. Look at his stage presence. In 2021, Wolfgang stood anchored to his microphone, almost hiding behind his guitar. He was incredible, but he was static. Watch the footage from the 2025 tour. He is prowling the stage. He is engaging with the crowd. The physical weight loss unlocked a kinetic energy that had been trapped for years. Another example, the trolls. In the past, Wolfgang would spend hours fighting people on Twitter. It was his way of venting. But in 2025, the fighting stopped. Why? Because when you are waking up at 6 a.m. to train, and you are eating clean, and you are feeling your body operate at peak efficiency, the opinions of user 7492 simply do not matter anymore. He didn't just lose weight. He lost the need for their validation. He replaced the dopamine hit of a Twitter argument with the dopamine hit of a personal record in the gym.
And we have to talk about the Nepo baby argument one last time, because this transformation killed it. A name can get you a meeting. A name can get you an audition. A name cannot force you to lose 80 pounds of fat through sweat and starvation. A name cannot write a riff that makes Slash nod in approval. A name cannot play drums, bass, guitar, and vocals on an entire record. By physically transforming himself, Wolfgang proved that he is capable of extreme hard work. It was the final visual proof that he isn't riding coattails, he is carving his own path through solid granite.
There is a moment in the Distance music video, the tribute to his dad, where a young Wolfgang is running into his father's arms. For years, people looked at that and felt pity. Poor kid, he lost his dad. Now, when you look at Wolfgang Van Halen, you don't see the poor kid. You see a man who looked his demons in the face, the grief, the addiction to food, the anxiety, the pressure of the legacy, and defeated them. The brutal reality of Wolfgang Van Halen's transformation isn't that he got skinny, it's that he decided to live. He decided that he was worth saving. And in doing so, he showed us that no matter how heavy the burden is, whether it's a famous last name or a grief that feels like it weighs 1,000 tons, you can set it down. You can change.
So the next time you see a comment mocking someone's appearance, remember the flight to Mexico City. Remember that you have no idea what war that person is fighting in the quiet moments at 30,000 feet. Wolfgang Van Halen won his war. The question is, what are you going to do about yours? If this story of resilience resonated with you, you need to watch this next video about how another rock icon faced a similar impossible choice. Click here to keep the momentum going.